pleasure of speaking with Michelle Freed, a certified hypnotist, remote viewer, and transformational coach. Michelle has extensive experience in the field of consciousness and has worked alongside leading experts in remote viewing. She not only practices, but also teaches and promotes this powerful methodology that allows individuals to access information beyond the ordinary senses. With her background in hypnosis and media production, Michelle brings a unique perspective to the intersection of mind, intuition, and human potential. We're going to explore the fascinating world of remote viewing, what it is, how it works, and how it can be applied in everyday life. Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining me here on Two Healing Minds. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And okay, so you are the expert on remote viewing, and that's what our interview is going to be about. So, for viewers who may be unfamiliar with the topic, can you briefly define what remote viewing is and share a little bit about the history and how it began as a government-funded program?
Well, most of the information in terms of the government program, we can look online. There's a whole bunch of documentaries, Third Eye Spies, and things like that, where people can kind of get a lot of that background and things like that. If it's okay, I'd rather spend more time describing what remote viewing is, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just in
Okay.
case, because not many people might be familiar.
Okay, well, just briefly, I will say that that remote viewing, there's a couple ways to look at it. When we say the word remote viewing or controlled remote viewing, this is a protocol that came from our government that they named it that. But the idea of remote viewing goes back to the beginning of time. And what it basically is being able to perceive things that are not in front of us. So setting an intention on a particular target, those are the words we use, target, we would focus on that and then just extrapolate information. And when we're talking about what I do, it's a system that is designed to help people achieve that idea, to use their body and to project their consciousness to a location and gather information.
Okay, so it's kind of like non-local awareness. Is that
Right. So,
what's meant about it?
right. So what it looks like is somebody, I kind of I have a division. So I have one that is more of a freestyle where somebody like a psychic or something could say, "Oh, I want to know what my sister's doing right now." And then they tune into their sister and then they'll get a whole bunch of information where she is, what she's doing, what she's wearing. So there's that kind of remote viewing. And the remote viewing that I'm talking about is something that we use pen and paper. We sit somewhere, we have a clipboard or something like that, and we follow a series of instructions or a system. And it's uh, put together in such a way to help us engage in our senses. And so what we're really doing is sensing things. So when we do that, the expectation is that you're going to get bits and pieces of information that eventually um, kind of form the whole story of what's at the target or what the question is. And basically, when you're doing control remote viewing, our viewers do not know what the target is. So it's we have a secret question. And so for example, if we're looking for a missing person, the question might be sketch and describe the current location of so and so, but the viewer will never know that question. Or, just sketch and describe the current condition of so and so. And those questions the viewer doesn't know. And so they follow the system, which runs through different phases. And as they're doing that, they're pretty much answering that question. And their consciousness doesn't know it, but their subconscious does know it.
Okay, it's interesting because you mentioned that so the viewer doesn't know what they're looking for. They don't know the question. So it's
Right.
someone else that's posing the question. Because it might sound kind of confusing. Because isn't it something that you go internally and say, well, this is something that I am trying to connect with, trying to find, and this is what I need to have in my mind in order to have that connection?
Right. So that's where we have a division, a little bit of a division. Um,
Hmm.
the controlled remote viewing, like what they do in the military, is very it's formal. It's a more formal type of project. We call it a project, and we follow this series of a system or a protocol, and we get the information. The other kind of remote viewing, we really should kind of figure out a different name of it so that they don't get confused because
Hmm.
we are in both cases using psychic abilities. We're sensing things and um, when we're doing more of a freestyle or intuitive remote viewing, then you generally know what you're looking at, and then things do pop in your head. Or some people even get spontaneous information. All of a sudden they'll go, "Oh, I just got a flash of something," and then they'll, report that. What we're doing in controlled remote viewing, which is what I do, this is something that is uh, there's a viewer, there's a project manager, there's, people that analyze your session. It kind of goes through a process. And then you follow this set of protocols that we teach people. And it really helps people get a lot of details. And what's really important about not knowing what the target is it keeps you from being biased about information. I had a student in my class the other day, and we were doing something called MedApps, where we will look at medical conditions of people, and she asked if she can remote view herself. And of course, you can remote view yourself, but you can get into a situation where you might be biased. And so it's better for the viewer to be blind to what they're viewing. So it just comes up more neutral when you do things like that.
Okay, so it's a almost like a controlled experiment in a way.
Right, right.
All the factors where people have their roles, and I don't want to say it's not spontaneous, but it's more controlled and instructional and
Exactly.
guided.
And guided and it's surrounded by intention. Everything is connected by an intention. And it runs through your session, and you're always thinking about what does the project manager want to know, what's important to the target. And you're moving around the target, you're gathering important, and you're always saying what is important to the question, to get that, or what is important to help people, things like that.
Okay, and okay, so leading to the next question. So that's a general idea. I'm sure it's more complex than that, but that was a good brief overview.
Yeah.
But well, this is the tricky part. Do you believe that remote viewing is a skill that anyone can learn, Or do you find it's easier for certain people that have that innate sensitivity or intuitive ability already?
Right. So um number one, I think it's part of being human.
Mhm.
So yes, everybody can do it, but I also agree with the fact that there are some people that are doing it than other people. And in the case of what I work with, it takes a lot of practice, and a lot of people compare it to a martial art, and meaning that practice, practice, practice. And what's really cool about the whole thing is every time you practice, and then at the end, we call it feedback. That's when, after you do your session, you find out what your target was, is the biggest place to learn about yourself on a personal level. You learn your potential as a person, as a human. You learn how your mind, your subconscious, and your conscious communicates with each other. I've learned lessons that I apply to my everyday life. So it's just a very 360-degree experience.
Okay, so it is as you said, mentioned, it's a trainable skill with a lot of practice and discipline and following the technique and being connected to yourself.
Hmm. Right.
So practice is key. So it's not like some people, they're a little bit have stronger intuitive ability, or maybe they might be an HSP, a highly sensitive person, where they're more connected internally. That has nothing to do with it.
Well, I think,
It's just,
I think a really good example is um, almost anybody can learn how to play the piano.
mhm.
Okay. Some people will be a world-class pianist. Some people won't, you
Oh
know?
yeah.
So it's kind of like that.
Yes, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That, that can apply to sports, that can apply to anything. And so going to your training, you trained under Joe McMoneagle. I think I pronounced his name right. And so he's one of the most respected remote viewers from the US military Stargate program. So, what are some valuable lessons that you learned from him?
So I learned from Joe and many other people what makes Joe a world-class remote viewing viewer is his uncanny um, sessions. I would say that it's very rare that he will, for example, say he was tasked or asked, or a project was to describe a photo. He somehow can literally draw that photo exactly like what the photo looks like. And that's very, very rare. Most people will get aspects of the photo, or they'll get some kind of sense of the photo. They'll get bits and pieces, things like that. But Joe, what makes him incredible is that he is able to, it's almost as if he's looking at it. And that, like I said, is very rare. Um, the other important thing I learned from him was something he called the black pearl. So a lot of times, and a lot of people do a cool down before they do the session. And the cool down is really part of the process that I believe will separate kind of like this life with your remote viewing life. So for me, the cool down is this transition to really tell all your senses in your body, all your consciousness, everything that, okay, we're going to remote view now. And let's just set aside the world and we're going to kind of step into this world. And one of the most important things that I learned, I haven't achieved it, is to get to the place that he called the Black Pearl. And that's a place of nothing. So
Hmm.
essentially, it's like being able to set aside every single thing and start with a very clean slate. And, the problem is that everybody has that mind chatter.
Mhm.
Everyone will sit down to start the session. Oh, I wonder what this session is. I wonder, and it's very hard to kind of pull yourself away from that. But it's something that I'm always striving to do.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most difficult. And you're almost talking about a highly meditative state where your mind is clear. You have basically nothing in your mind, no distractions, no worries, no thoughts. I mean, as you said, that is a very difficult state to get to. It's like
Yeah,
clearing it so much, it's like empty space, right? You're working
right.
from empty space,
Yeah,
and
and knowing me, I'd
and
be
not
like,
everyone can get to that space.
yeah. And knowing me, I'd be like, oh, the space is empty. No, it can't be empty. There's got to be something. And then I'll just go on a tangent about nothing. So, what is nothing? And then it just goes down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I don't even know if monks can do it. I'm sure they're the closest to be able to do it. But I feel like if you're working towards it, that's at least something.
Yeah, so now I can understand why he's very advanced, because that's something, a state of mind that is very hard to reach for many people.
Yeah.
And it's easier to work from that space probably
Right,
to get
right,
more to be more effective remote viewer.
right.
And so but have you ever participated in like a double blind or controlled experiments to verify like the accuracy of the work? And what were the results?
So, I participate. We have, I think about three that I can think of, three experiments that we worked on. I was not a viewer. I was one of the, um, organizers or project managers, and they're on my website if anyone wants to read them. It's written very like a peer reviewed, but it was published in the Journal for Cyclical Research and several other magazines and quoted in a lot of books. But we wanted to use a particular, there's quite a few different variations of remote viewing in the controlled remote viewing world. And one of them, which is very, um, works really well with experiments because you can quantify everything, is
Mhm.
something called associative remote viewing. And what this is something that we will set up a project where we have a binary target. So, for example, uh, the stock market, we want to know, we're going to do some precognition, look into the future, and predict if something's going to go up or something's going to go down.
Mhm.
Or in sporting events, you want to know is something going to go over or under. And so instead of our viewers looking directly at the stock or the teams, because again, we want to keep them from being biased, we will substitute the teams, or not really substitute, but we'll do a kind of layover of a photo. And we use two completely different photos for that will represent both sides. So the up or down, the A or B, the under over, whatever what yes or no, whatever it is. And then we assign these projects to our viewers, and they will do a session, and then we make a prediction based on their session. So does their session lean towards, the up or the down or the over, under, whatever it is? And so because you can do that, it's a good way for us to figure out how well we're doing in the experiment. So we use that system on predicting the president. So we've done that, I think, two or three times for the presidents. The fascinating one is that we were so dead wrong uh,
Oh,
with the Hillary Clinton and Trump. Yeah, it was Hillary Clinton and Trump, right?
yes.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I think that was it. Yeah. So we were like shocked because and it was weird because across the board, a lot of the psychics were all looking at Hillary. And there was a small percent that were like, yeah, I knew it was Trump. So it was very fascinating because it is something to look at when something is so far to the other side too.
Mm.
How could we be all so wrong? What happened? And that's something interesting to study too, that so many people could have been wrong and very few people be right. So that's one session. And then just other ones too. We had um, some that we did where we use dreams. We
Mhm.
would make a prediction using dreams, and we had 70, no, 68% hit rate on that project. So we did about 51 trials, and I think it was an average of 60, I think it something like that. So I don't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, so and those you can read on my website, butterflyeffectscenter.com. So
Okay,
yeah.
interesting. So what do you mean by the dreams? Like you're kind of you have a question and it just presents itself in the dream state?
So we
I
have a
see that's
project
correct.
manager. We're still doing this associative remote viewing.
Oh, okay,
So
associative.
that we're looking at photos that represent something. So I think we were doing sporting events. I think they were baseball games. And so on Friday nights, we were given a target number and we were told to set an intention before we went to sleep. We would sleep with a clipboard by our bed so
Mhm.
that the moment that we wake up, we do a session really quick so we don't forget anything. And the idea is that you set the intention that you're going to dream of the photo that they're going to show us at the end of the game. And that photo is usually the one, well, that photo is the
Hmm.
one of the winning team. And so you go to sleep and you have a dream, you wake up, you do a session, you send it to the project manager, and we had about 6 people working on this, 6 or 7,
Mhm.
and she would make a prediction, and she actually wagered. And we had, I think it was like a 62, somewhere in the 60% hit rate. I don't remember now.
Oh, that's
So
pretty high though.
no, we were only doing like $1, so it's not like we made millions of dollars. We just were doing it, for science.
Okay. Oh, interesting. And so if you had to describe like your experience remote viewing, how does it feel like on a sensory or cognitive level? Can you walk through what goes on to the process? Is it like something like, let's see, like okay, you have this question or this target. Do you get like a movie or impressions in your mind? Do you get like colors, textures, or just everything? Whatever comes to your mind. How does it?
Exactly, everything. So, what I train in my class is that we're an antenna, and our intention is to just let the target come to us. And we're trained to write down and to pay attention to our bodies. So sometimes you'll feel a pressure in your head. Sometimes I had a partner that I was working with and we were just doing a practice target.
Hmm.
And he had uh, an emotional reaction and he had to stop the session. He just started hyperventilating and sweating. And he's like, Michelle, I can't do this anymore. What is the target? And the target actually was that glass bridge in Japan, where it's between two mountains and you can see, so he was afraid of heights.
Oh, okay, no wonder. Yes, I can imagine that would terrify me too.
Yeah, he didn't know what it was. His
Uh-huh.
body was reacting to something that was going on at the target. But when I told him, then everything was like, oh, that makes sense. So, yeah, that's how it works. And we do a lot of training because, we don't realize how little we pay attention to what things feel like. One example all your listeners can do, which would be really cool, is to pay attention to what things feel like when you walk through a threshold from one room to another room. And for example, from the living room to the dining room, what feels different? Or from outside inside your house, or in the car, or in a store, and pay attention to what's different. How does your body feel? And you'd be very surprised at the different things that happen in your body. And the same thing happens when you're at at a location. Um, you we teach everybody to um, move around a target so that they can have an experience. And it's really important and you can't get hurt. So if the target's a volcano, uh, and you can actually go inside the volcano and you'll be okay. But it would be a cool experience to see what it feels like to do those things. And your body will pick up on different senses. And then you're just writing everything down that you get.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to ask next. Because when you're in the session, I mean, do you have to have your eyes closed the whole time, or you can have it open? Is there movement? Is there not movement? Are you writing and drawing the whole time, or are you waiting till everything's done, your whole processing, and then start writing and
Every,
drawing?
everything,
Oh,
everything.
everything. Okay.
So, yeah, so I personally encourage people to get their butts out of the seats. So walk around and, as you're walking, what's under your feet, what's over your head. Sometimes you'll see when people are viewing, they'll start swaying, like this, like maybe they're in water, or they'll be moving in a certain way. We also ask them to direct themselves. If there's some kind of structure, we say blend with the structure, and then they'll like get in the shape of whatever the structure is. And then we ask them, what does that feel like? And then they describe it. So the more that they engage in the target, the more dynamic their sessions become.
Okay, so it doesn't depend just on the person. Like if somebody's more visual, maybe they want to sit quietly with their eyes closed and see what they can see. Or if somebody's more kinesthetic, like they have to move in order to connect. Is it something personal, or it's just you have to do all, use all your
No, you
senses?
don't. Right. We encourage you to use all your senses.
Mhm.
Um, the problem, I don't even know if it's a problem, but an area that one of the fundamental things in controlled remote viewing is that we encourage people never to name something. So we say just describe it. So, for example, if somebody perceives something red, shiny, round, um, and it's an apple, okay, or they'll say, "Oh, it's an apple, red, shiny, round. It's an apple," and we actually call that an analytical overlay. That means that they named it, they drew a conclusion, or they made an assumption based on this description that's and because your left brain says, well, all right, what's red, what's shiny, what's round? Oh, an apple.
Mhm.
And what happens is they the whole session could be describing something about an apple. They could be describing a fruit basket in the end. We don't want that to happen because if you're looking for a missing person, unless they're near a fruit basket, that's not going to be helpful. So it could be that something red, shiny, and round could be a truck that is near, that makes more sense. But we have to be very careful of that. So when people start depending on these videos going on in their minds, they just have to be careful not to kind of build a story around these visions. That some of it can be a metaphor or symbols and things like that. So even if they perceive something through visual means or in their mind's eye, um, that they have to just be very careful to just stick to describing what things feel like.
Okay, so if you're in your mind's eye, you see like, okay, I see the ocean, I see the waves. No, you can't describe it like that. You just say,
Well,
I see
think about this.
water, I see water.
So think about this. If
Uh-huh.
you say, I see the ocean, I see waves, or I see movement or wind, I'm feeling wind and waves. Well, how do you know it's the ocean and not like the desert? Because the desert has those same patterns in the sand. So if you get caught up in and you say, oh, it's ocean, then your mindset throughout the whole session is in the water and the ocean. And what if your target is actually like in Middle Eastern and you're looking for, somebody in Middle East or in the desert or whatever. So we want to make, someone like Joe McMoneagle, he's an exception and, he is pretty on target. Like when he says something, it's pretty dependable, but not always actually. So I mean, he
Hmm.
does go off too. All of us do. So
Yeah, because I could see how some people's imagination would kind of take off. Once they're seeing something and they're getting kind of far from the remote viewing, the experiment. It's just like their imagination taking hold and it's taking them here and take it might be way off base, but they're like, wow, I think
exactly.
it's your imaginative part of your brain is working right
Right.
now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that can be tricky
Right. And that's where the discipline comes from and the practice.
for
You start
practicing.
learning, you start getting a sense of, oh, this is what we call an AOL. This is an AOL. This is so it reminds me of a tree, but it's not a tree. You'll start to understand those things that it reminds me of the water, but it's just not the water. And that's what happens over time and practice.
Okay, and also, as you said, a lot of this is drawn. Everybody has like a notepad and then they draw the pictures or it's text. You can like can you write words or use numbers? Like I saw this number or no. It's
Yeah, yeah, that's actually great. If people get symbols and anything that comes, the way that it's part of the training, and we go through different phases where at some points you're writing descriptors and your perceptions and what things feel like, and then you'll move into other phases where you're sketching things out, and then you move into others where you're probing for more information, taking a deep dive, making lots of sketches. So it's all part of the process. And um, yeah, just kind of a combination of everything.
okay. And so most of this is like the remote viewing is for a present moment. Can it be used for events in the past? And I think you briefly went over like in the future, like predicting financial markets or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And a question or something that I brought up about imagination. How does the person distinguish like, oh, this is my imagination
Uh, that,
or
that
or this is actual insight that's working?
that's the trick. That's the
Uh-huh.
trick. That's where we haven't mastered that yet. The only time they're gonna know usually unless they practice a lot and they kind of know how their mind works, but that takes years and many sessions to get a hang of that. But basically it's you won't know until you get your feedback. You won't know until and then at that point you say, oh gosh, I know why I got this information because my mind, saw it. Like, here's an example. Um, I didn't know what the target was, and I was tasked, I was given a project that they were predicting a disaster in the Canary Islands. And so that we didn't know anything about that. So I'm doing my session and I got to a part and something that popped in my head was canary bird. So
Oh.
it's like your mind wants to give you the information, but sometimes it gets a little wanky. It's
Mhm.
like I said canary bird, but that I was just like canary bird. Why am I, getting canary? Is that my imagination? I don't know. And then what ended up happening is when I found out what the target was and they said Canary Islands, I'm like, oh, that's why canary was what was important. But I had no clue until I got the feedback.
Okay, and uh, can this be applied? Do you do sessions or is remote viewing possible for past? For
Yeah.
past?
Um, yeah, we work on a ton of projects in the past. We do a lot of cold cases and true crimes. We do mysteries, ancient aliens, and we do, kind of crazy stuff. Is there an alien base on the moon? How were the pyramids built? Who built Stonehenge? All sorts of things like that.
Okay, and I know that you have actually experience in working in criminal investigations. So, can you briefly describe? You worked in high-profile missing persons cases, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I think it was the Ramsey and the Murdaugh. Is it Murdaugh?
yeah.
I'm pronouncing a case.
Murdoch case. That was it South Carolina or North Carolina?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm
it was.
just curious, how did law enforcement, or how did you connect with that? How did you get involved?
So for the Murdaugh case, we were actually hired by an author who was researching that case, and she put a whole entire chapter about our remote viewing results in her book. So we were doing that to help her get more information to put her on a different track. Uh, that she kept getting the same things, and then what ended up happening is she needed different eyes on it. And what's great is different viewers have different personalities and different interests, so having lots of viewers looking at the same target helps get a 360-degree view, because
Mhm.
one person might be looking at logistics of something. One person might be looking at the emotional, one person looking at something else. And so putting it all together can put her on a different trajectory that and explore some other ideas of what's going on there. So that kind of thing
So she
is
was an author, you said, or
yeah. Her name is Rebecca Pittman, and
okay.
I think it's like I don't know if I have the book near me, but it's like I think it's like a 700-page book or something. I think she went to all the trials and she was just very obsessed with this case.
Oh my
Just
goodness.
know all about it. So that was one. There are times where we work with the police department and detectives and all sorts of things like that. Just you know, wanting to see some cold cases and get extra, JFK is interesting. I've never done JFK. Um, there was another case another one that I worked with. It was actually another author that was working with detectives. So
Mhm.
I wasn't working directly with detectives, I was working with the author. And she was looking at the origin of Lyme disease and the ticks. And so we worked on that case. It was very, very interesting.
Okay,
So
so you just give them like different approaches or outlooks so that they can kind of look into it to kind
it
of like
helps
guide them.
them. Yeah, like for example, for the Lyme disease, we brought up some information that she never thought of. And so then her research went in that direction. And it turned out that she found a lot of stuff that was kind of matching up with what she was working on now. So it kind of gave her a more robust report. So, she never would have thought that. But because we didn't have any biases, we had no clue what
Mhm.
the target was. We just did our thing, and that helped her get more information uh, so that she can take a deeper dive.
So do you do a lot of this kind of work, Michelle, or just not
Actually,
frequently?
it is a lot. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we have quite a few cases that we work on for people like that. Um, yeah. Some I can't talk about yet
Oh,
because
yeah, yeah. I was going to say,
yeah.
obviously, for confidentiality purposes.
Well, also some of them we're in the middle of, and I can't reveal anything until the future when we put all the facts together.
Oh,
So,
I understand. And so this is some pretty deep work that you're involved in and your team. So how do you protect yourself? Or because this can be mentally draining. I'm sure sometimes it can be disturbing content and dark, working in criminal investigations or anything that's traumatic. So what do you
yeah,
do to protect or to kind of cleanse yourself? Like, boy, that was a intense remote viewing session.
I'm so glad you brought that
Because
up
it
because
could
it's
be, I'm
really
sure.
important. Not everybody can do these kinds of targets. So one of the things that is incorporated in the training is, first of all, we do teach everyone to put up protection. But in addition to that, we ask them to kind of right before they agree to do this session, we ask them to kind of ask their higher self if doing this session's in their greater good. And if it's yes, then they can move forward. If it's no, then they'll just say no, sorry, I can't do this target. The other protection we do is at the very end of every session, we end the session. So we actually do something, some symbolic thing, some physical thing, where we are kind of severing that connection to the target. So for me, I'll just put the letters EOS and a little scribble, and that tells me my session is done. So, so those are several ways that we protect ourselves.
Yeah, because I can imagine it's intense. And have you ever had someone that maybe in the middle of the session or after said, "Oh, this is too much for me. I don't think I can do this. This is
Um,
taking too much out of me." I don't know.
Usually, in my experience, I've I recall one person that couldn't shake it.
Hmm.
And I remember she would call me, like she kept texting me, okay, I got this, I got that, and she was obsessed over it. And she'd be doing her dishes, and then there's more and I said, did you end your session? And she's like, no. I said, what's the first rule about ending your session? Ending your session. Like you got to end it.
Yes.
And that's part of a discipline too, because it's very easy to go on and on about it because, you start getting emotionally invested. So you really do have to kind of end it.
Hmm. Can learn
So,
how to disconnect, and that takes practice also.
yes. Yeah.
And I was wondering if you have any, or I don't know if you can share this, if you have any insight whether remote viewing is still being used in governmental or intelligence programs today.
I,
And if there's, I don't know, I know there's like controversial topics like from the past, mind control, or using experiments on children or anything like that.
you know,
Something odd.
working with Art Bell, in the day, we had so many shows talking about that, and so many people were very believable. But there's a certain percent where I found, and even through remote viewing, I learned that the person wasn't intentionally. trying to hoax anyone, but that they really believe their story. And so I don't know. I mean, I have no clue. I have some guesses or some, things that I think might be going on. I'm sure that because remote viewing was something that was working, I think that they just moved up from that. And my guess is that they're starting to add technology to psychic abilities. I don't have any reason to believe that. I just think or, imagine that the government is doing experiments on adding technical to kind of boost, how I said like we're all antennas. So
Yes. Mhm.
I'm imagining that they would be using some technology that boosts that signal to make people, better at psychic abilities. All this work that we're doing in my personal mission is to really allow for all humans to kind of reach our potential. And I feel like we're not even close. So there's just so much more to go. We're still so busy fighting on such, trivial things
Mhm.
that if we could put all the energy of fighting over these things into bettering ourselves as a race, or a human or species, we would be so much further along in our abilities.
Okay, and it just you kind of answered another question I had for you. It's like some people say that remote viewing maybe taps into a universal consciousness or a quantum field, and you kind of explained like we're probably not ready. A lot of people aren't even ready for that.
I think, there are some theory, we can't prove anything. We talk about, when you're doing anything precognition, the idea of quantum entanglement kind of comes in. So you're reaching out into the future, and then it opens up a whole bunch of philosophical questions about, if you knew your future and you had a choice to make, would you make that same choice or would you change the choice because that didn't work out or whatever? So, we have these really crazy talks with all these really big minds in this world. And it's fascinating to hear their theories and thoughts on these things. It's kind of cool.
Yes, it is. I mean, I find the topics very fascinating. And just to wrap it up, Michelle, I just wanted to first of all thank you so much for talking about remote viewing in this interview. And if you can share with you if you have a website, a book, anything you want to share, platform.
Sure. I have a class coming up in August. I think it's August 16th. So I'll be teaching a 6-week course on just pretty much what we're talking, and it includes MedApps as well. You can get more information on my website, butterflyeffectcenter.com, and it's spelled butterfly and then effect, EFFECT center.com. And then just click on the remote viewing section and it will give you a lot of information. If you have any questions, they can fill out the contact form and reach out to me, and I'll be happy to answer any of those questions.
Okay, well, thanks again. I really appreciate it, Michelle.
It was my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.